At the hospital, the nurse asked me, "Do you want to visit your husband's wife first?" I stood there frozen, my designer handbag dropping to the floor with a thud that seemed to echo through the sterile hallway. The woman, a petite nurse with sympathetic eyes, looked at me with confusion slowly spreading across her face. My husband's wife? I was my husband's wife. For 22 years, I had been Mrs. Abimbola Johnson, the devoted partner of the most respected cardiologist at Mercy General Hospital. The same man who, according to this nurse, had another wife. The same man who lay in intensive care after a car accident that happened just 3 miles from our home, on a route he had driven thousands of times. The same man who had kissed me goodbye this morning and told me he would be working late, as he had for the past 3 months. The same man who had access to our joint account with $387,000, money I had saved from my catering business over 15 years, money that was meant for our retirement in Ghana, money that could very well be funding this other wife's lifestyle right now. I fought to keep my voice steady as I asked the nurse, "What exactly do you mean by my husband's wife?" If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. Your support means everything to me, and I promise, this story is one you'll want to follow all the way to its shocking conclusion. Just yesterday morning, my life seemed so perfectly normal, organized, comfortable, predictable. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. as I had for the past 20 years, quietly preparing for the day while Lawrence slept. At 48, I was proud of the life we had built together. After immigrating from Ghana to America when I was just 22 years old, our 3-bedroom home in the suburbs was modest by American standards, but filled with treasures from our homeland. Hand-carved wooden masks on the walls, colorful kente cloth draped over the sofa, and family photographs capturing 2 decades of memories. The kitchen was my domain, a spacious area with granite countertops and professional-grade appliances that I had insisted on when we renovated 5 years ago. My catering business, Mama Ama's Kitchen, had grown from preparing occasional dishes for church functions to catering corporate events and weddings. Last year alone, I had cleared $98,000 in profit. Lawrence and I had met during my first year in America, when I was struggling to adapt to the cold climate and unfamiliar customs. He was already established then, 10 years older than me, handsome in his white doctor's coat, and possessing a quiet confidence that made me feel safe. When he proposed 6 months later, my family back in Accra had concerns about the rushed timeline, but I was certain he was my destiny. Our marriage had its challenges. Lawrence's demanding schedule at the hospital meant he often missed family gatherings, and our shared dream of having children never materialized despite years of trying. But we had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I focused on building my business while supporting his career, managing our home, and being active in our community. Every Sunday, we attended the Ghanaian Presbyterian Church where I led the women's auxiliary group that raised funds for children back home. Just last month, Lawrence had surprised me with a beautiful diamond bracelet for our anniversary, $3,200 according to the receipt I accidentally found in his jacket pocket. "You deserve it, Amma," he had said. "You've been so patient with me all these years." I wore it proudly, showing it off to my friends who commented on how lucky I was to have such a generous husband. Our retirement plans were well underway. We had been saving diligently to build a home in Accra, close to the beach. Lawrence often talked about opening a small clinic there, while I dreamed of teaching local women to prepare fusion dishes that would appeal to tourists. We had already purchased the land for $75,000 3 years ago, and I had been researching building designs that would combine modern conveniences with traditional elements. Every morning, I prepared Lawrence's favorite breakfast, plantain pancakes with a side of fresh fruit, and packed him a lunch of jollof rice and grilled chicken. He would kiss me goodbye, his breath minty fresh, his cologne, the expensive one I gave him last Christmas that cost $185, lingering in the air after he left. "I'll be late tonight," he said yesterday, as he had been saying frequently in recent months. "Don't wait up." I nodded, already planning to use the evening to finalize the menu for next weekend's wedding. Reception. A high-profile event for the daughter of our church, pastor that could lead to more lucrative contracts if executed perfectly. Little did I know that within 24 hours, every certainty in my life would be shattered, every truth revealed as a carefully constructed lie. The first small crack in my perfect life had appeared 3 months ago. I was preparing for a large catering event when I ran out of the special imported spices I needed for my signature dish. Knowing Lawrence kept a spare key to his office desk in his nightstand, I went looking for our backup credit card that we kept for emergencies. As I rummaged through the drawer, my fingers touched an unfamiliar piece of paper tucked beneath his reading glasses case. It was a receipt from Cartier for a gold necklace, $4,150. The date on the receipt was 2 weeks earlier, but it wasn't my birthday, our anniversary, or any special occasion I could think of. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope it was a surprise gift for me, though Lawrence had never been spontaneous with presents before. I carefully returned the receipt to its hiding place, feeling slightly guilty for snooping. That evening, when Lawrence came home, I watched him carefully, looking for any hint that he was planning to surprise me. But he was the same as always, tired, a little distant, asking about my day while checking his emails on his phone. The necklace never appeared. No gift box, no surprise reveal. The incident slipped to the back of my mind as I focused on my growing business and community responsibilities. A few weeks later, I noticed another oddity. Our phone bill showed several late-night calls to the same number, always after I had gone to bed. When I casually mentioned the unknown number to Lawrence, he dismissed it without looking up from his medical journal. Just a new resident at the hospital who needs mentoring. Poor girl's having trouble adjusting to the intensity of cardiology. I told her she could call any time. I nodded, feeling a slight unease that I immediately suppressed. Lawrence had always mentored younger doctors, especially those who, like him, had immigrated to America. His dedication to helping others advance in medicine was one of the qualities I most admired about him. Then came the changes in his routine. For 20 years, Lawrence had been predictable to a fault. He woke at 6:30 a.m., was out the door by 7:15, and usually home by 7 p.m. unless he was on call. Suddenly, he was leaving earlier, coming home later, and working weekends when he previously protected that time for us. The hospital is short-staffed, he explained when I asked, and I'm leading a new research initiative that could help secure my department's funding. I believed him because I had always believed him. What reason did I have not to? He was Lawrence, respected doctor, devoted husband, pillar of our community. The man who had built a life with me from nothing, who had promised to grow old with me in our homeland. But then came the scent. One evening when Lawrence returned home, I leaned in to kiss him and caught the faint trace of a perfume I didn't recognize. Something floral and expensive. Nothing like the cocoa butter lotion I had used for years because he once mentioned he liked it. When I drew back slightly, he must have seen the question in my eyes. The new hospital administrator insists on hugging everyone, he said with a dismissive laugh. Woman doesn't understand personal boundaries. Again, I nodded and smiled, pushing down the flicker of doubt. That night, after Lawrence fell asleep, I lay awake listening to his breathing, wondering why, after all these years, I suddenly felt like a stranger was sleeping beside me. The final crack appeared just last week. I was at the bank depositing catering checks when the teller frowned at her screen. Mrs. Johnson, did you know there was a withdrawal of $15,000 from your joint account last Tuesday? I hadn't known. Lawrence and I had separate personal accounts for day-to-day expenses, but our joint account was primarily for savings and major purchases, which we always discussed together. There must be a mistake, I said, my heart beginning to race. The teller turned her monitor so I could see. There it was, a withdrawal made in person at another branch across town, signed for by Lawrence. The same day he told me he would be at a medical conference in the neighboring state. Would you like a printed statement, Mrs. Johnson? The teller asked. I nodded mutely, took the paper, folded it carefully, and placed it in my purse. That evening, I prepared Lawrence's favorite meal, grilled tilapia with spicy plantains, and waited for him to explain the withdrawal. He praised the food, talked about the productive conference, and never mentioned the money. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen methodically, my mind racing. There had to be a logical explanation. Perhaps he was planning a surprise vacation. Maybe he had made an investment he wanted to tell me about once it proved successful. Or was there a medical emergency in his family back home that he didn't want to worry me with? I almost convinced myself, almost tucked away the doubt with all the other small inconsistencies I had noticed but chosen to ignore. Almost. But that night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and took Lawrence's phone from the charger. For the first time in our marriage, I found myself typing in his passcode, my birthday, at least that hadn't changed, and scrolling through his messages. Most were work-related, nothing suspicious. His email showed conference registrations, hospital correspondence, and newsletter subscriptions. I was about to return the phone, feeling simultaneously relieved and ashamed, when I noticed an app I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I found a second text messaging service, and a conversation with someone saved simply as N. The messages were brief and cryptic. Miss you. Late meeting tonight, but tomorrow for sure. Don't worry. Everything is progressing as planned. The last message sent yesterday morning. Can't wait to start our new life. Soon. I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it and returned to bed, lying rigid beside the man who had been my world for half my life, wondering if anything I knew about him, about us, was real. This morning, Lawrence left earlier than usual, kissing me distractedly on the cheek without meeting my eyes. Don't forget, I'm working late again tonight, he said as he grabbed his keys. The Johnson case is complicated. I nodded, watching him carefully. Lawrence, I said just as he reached the door. Is everything okay? With us, I mean? He turned, his expression softening into the smile that had made me fall in love with him decades ago. Of course, Amma, everything is perfect. Why do you ask? No reason, I said, forcing a smile. Have a good day. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I called my best friend Fatima. Unlike me, Fatima had always been suspicious of men, having survived a painful divorce 10 years earlier. I need your help, I told her. Something's not right with Lawrence. Fatima arrived within the hour, her face grim with concern. I showed her the bank statement, told her about the mysterious necklace, the late-night calls, the unfamiliar perfume, and finally, the cryptic messages. Oh, Amma, she sighed, taking my hands in hers. You know what this means, don't you? I did know, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words aloud. Saying them would make them real. We need to find out who she is, Fatima said firmly. And we need to protect your assets immediately. How much do you have in that joint account? $37,000, I whispered. Everything I've saved from the business. Our retirement fund. Fatima's eyes widened. Call your bank right now. Put a freeze on that account. My hands trembled as I dialed the number. The bank representative was sympathetic but firm. Both account holders would need to approve any restrictions. The best they could do was flag the account for any large withdrawals and require in-person verification. It's something, at least, Fatima said after I hung up. Now, let's figure out who this woman is. We spent the next few hours playing detective. Fatima suggested we drive by the hospital during lunch hours to see if we could spot Lawrence with someone, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I logged into our cell phone account and checked the frequently called numbers. Again, one number stood out, labeled in the account as Natasha Wilson. The calls had started exactly 3 months ago and had increased in frequency and duration. Google her, Fatima urged. With shaking fingers, I typed the name into the search engine, adding nurse and the hospital name as qualifiers. The results loaded, and I felt the floor drop from beneath me. Natasha Wilson, 32 years old according to her profile, 16 years younger than me, smiled from the hospital staff directory. She was beautiful in a way I had never been, with smooth light brown skin and long straight hair. Her biography indicated she was a nurse practitioner in the cardiology department, Lawrence's department. That's her, I whispered. Fatima squeezed my shoulder. What do you want to do? I wasn't sure. Confront Lawrence? Contact this Natasha person? Pretend I knew nothing until I had a better plan? Before I could decide, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Johnson? A formal voice asked when I answered. This is Mercy General Hospital. Your husband has been in a car accident. He's in surgery now. Could you come in immediately? The world tilted sideways. Whatever Lawrence had done, whatever lies he had told, he was still my husband, the man I had built a life with. I'll be right there, I said, already reaching for my car keys. Should I come with you? Fatima asked, concern etched on her face. I shook my head. I need to do this alone. Whatever was waiting for me at that hospital, I would face it with the dignity my mother had instilled in me. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I parked haphazardly and rushed through the automatic doors, approaching the information desk with my heart in my throat. "I'm here for Dr. Lawrence Johnson," I said to the receptionist. "I'm his wife." The woman looked up at me, then checked her computer. "Yes, Mrs. Johnson, he's out of surgery now. If you'll follow the nurse, she'll take you to the waiting area and update you on his condition." I followed the nurse through the labyrinthine corridors, trying to prepare myself for whatever came next. Would Lawrence be conscious? What would I say to him? The questions swirled in my mind until we reached a private waiting room. "The doctor will be with you shortly," the nurse said, gesturing for me to sit. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "No, thank you," I replied automatically. "I just need to know if my husband is okay." The nurse hesitated, a slight frown crossing her face. "Are you Mrs. Abimbola Johnson?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Lawrence's wife." Her expression shifted subtly. "I'll let the doctor know you're here." She left, and I sat alone in the sterile room, clutching my purse to my chest like a shield. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, the door opened, and a different nurse entered, the petite one with the sympathetic eyes. She smiled kindly at me. "Mrs. Johnson? Dr. Lawrence Johnson's wife?" "Yes," I confirmed again, growing impatient. "Can I see my husband now?" The nurse consulted her clipboard, confusion flickering across her face. "I'm sorry for any mix-up. We have 2 visitors for Dr. Johnson. Do you want to visit your husband's wife first?" And just like that, my world imploded. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "I am Mrs. Johnson, Dr. Lawrence Johnson's wife." The nurse's face paled. She checked her clipboard again, flipping anxiously between pages. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," she stammered. "There must be a mistake. According to our records, Dr. Johnson's emergency contact is listed as Natasha Wilson Johnson, his wife." The room seemed to shrink around me. "That's impossible," I managed to say. "Lawrence and I have been married for 22 years. I have our marriage certificate, our joint accounts, our—" I stopped, suddenly remembering the $15,000 withdrawal, the cryptic text messages, the gold necklace. The nurse looked deeply uncomfortable. "Perhaps you should speak with the doctor," she suggested, backing toward the door. "I'll get him right away." Left alone again, I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called Fatima. "You need to come now," I whispered when she answered. "And bring my lockbox from the closet, the one with all our important documents." While waiting for Fatima, I tried to make sense of what was happening. Could Lawrence have secretly divorced me? No. I would have had to sign papers. Could this Natasha person be delusional, claiming to be married to my husband? But then why would she be listed as his emergency contact? Before I could form a coherent theory, the door opened again, and a grave-looking doctor entered. "Mrs. Johnson? I'm Dr. Patel, the surgeon who operated on your husband. How is he?" I asked automatically, my concern for Lawrence temporarily overriding my confusion and anger. "He's stable. The impact caused internal bleeding and a collapsed lung, but we were able to repair the damage. He's unconscious, but responding well to treatment." I nodded, relieved despite everything. "There seems to be some confusion about my relationship to Lawrence," I said carefully. The nurse mentioned another woman claiming to be his wife. Dr. Patel's expression became guarded. "Yes, we have a complicated situation. Both you and Ms. Wilson are listed in Dr. Johnson's records, though in different capacities. For privacy reasons, I can't discuss the details, but perhaps this would be a conversation better had with Dr. Johnson when he regains consciousness." "When will that be?" I asked. "Hard to say. Could be hours, could be days." He received a significant blow to the head. My professional mask slipped into place, the one I wore when catering events went wrong but clients were watching. "I understand. I'll wait." Dr. Patel seemed relieved by my calm response. "The ICU nurse will update you on any changes. Only one visitor at a time is allowed once he's cleared for visitation." After he left, I sat perfectly still, my mind racing. Different capacities? What did that mean? Fatima arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and carrying my metal lockbox. "What's happening?" she demanded, sitting beside me and taking my hand. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, though my voice cracked when I repeated the nurse's question about visiting my husband's wife. "This is insane," Fatima declared. "You need to see what's in his records. You're his legal wife. You have rights." Together we approached the nurse's station. The young woman behind the desk looked up warily as we approached. "I need to see my husband's medical records," I stated firmly. "I am Dr. Johnson's wife and have power of attorney for his healthcare decisions." The nurse hesitated. "I'll need to see identification and documentation of that power of attorney." With steady hands, I opened the lockbox and retrieved our marriage certificate, the power of attorney documents we had prepared years ago, and my driver's license. I placed them on the counter like cards in a high-stakes game. The nurse examined them carefully, then made copies. "I'll have to consult with administration," she said. "Please return to the waiting room." Back in the sterile room, Fatima paced while I sat rigidly in my chair. "Where is this other woman?" Fatima demanded. "This Natasha person? Why isn't she here making a scene?" "Maybe she doesn't know yet," I suggested. "Or maybe she's already been here and gone." Before Fatima could respond, the door opened again, and an older woman in an administrative suit entered, carrying a folder. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Sandra Tompkins, Patient Relations Manager. I understand there's some confusion about your husband's status." "The only confusion," I replied evenly, "is why someone else is claiming to be married to my husband." Ms. Tompkins sat across from me, her expression carefully neutral. "This is a delicate situation. According to our records, Dr. Johnson updated his emergency contacts 3 months ago, adding Natasha Wilson as his spouse. However, we also have your information on file from his previous records. Given the discrepancy in the documentation you've provided, we're treating this as a potential case of medical identity fraud." "It's not identity fraud," I said quietly. "It's bigamy," Ms. Tompkins blinked rapidly. "That would be a legal matter beyond our scope. Our concern is ensuring proper medical care and maintaining patient confidentiality. Given your legal documentation, you do have rights to your husband's medical information and visitation. However, until this is resolved, we would ask that you and the other party coordinate your visitation times to avoid any confrontation that might impede Dr. Johnson's recovery." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Schedule visitation times with my husband's mistress, or worse, his second wife. "When can I see him?" I asked instead. "He's being settled in ICU now. You can see him in about 30 minutes, but he's still unconscious." After Ms. Tompkins left, Fatima turned to me with fire in her eyes. "This is outrageous. You need to call a lawyer immediately. And the police." "Bigamy is a crime," I nodded absently, my mind spinning with implications. If Lawrence had committed bigamy, his entire career could be destroyed. Our standing in the community, our plans, our future, everything would collapse. And what about our finances? Had he been supporting this other family with my hard-earned money? "I need to see him first," I decided. "I need to understand what's happening before I make any moves." Fatima looked like she wanted to argue but nodded reluctantly. "I'll be right outside if you need me." 30 minutes later, a different nurse led me to the ICU. Through the glass partition, I saw Lawrence for the first time since this morning, except it felt like decades had passed. He lay motionless, connected to multiple machines, his face bruised and swollen. Despite everything, my heart clenched at the sight of him so vulnerable. 10 minutes maximum, the nurse instructed, opening the door for me. I approached the bed slowly, studying the man who had been my husband, my partner, my future. Now he was a stranger, a liar, possibly a criminal. "Lawrence," I whispered, not expecting a response. "What have you done?" His monitors beeped steadily, but he remained still. I noticed his hand, the one not connected to an IV, resting on the blanket. His wedding ring was missing. Had it been removed for the surgery, or had he stopped wearing it altogether? Looking around to ensure I was alone, I reached for his phone on the bedside table. It was damaged from the accident, but still functional. The passcode had always been my birthday, 0517. I typed it in, but the phone remained locked. With a sinking feeling, I tried another combination, 0212, Natasha's birthday according to the hospital staff directory I had viewed earlier. The phone unlocked. My hands trembling slightly, I navigated to his photo gallery. What I found confirmed my worst fears and revealed others I hadn't even considered. Lawrence and Natasha embracing on a beach I didn't recognize. Lawrence and Natasha in front of a modest house with a sold sign. Lawrence and Natasha, with a small boy, perhaps 5 years old, who had Lawrence's exact smile. I scrolled through months of domestic scenes, birthday parties, dinner outings, lazy Sunday mornings captured in intimate detail. Each image drove the knife deeper. This wasn't just an affair. This was a parallel life, complete with a child I knew nothing about. Moving to his email, I found recent exchanges with a real estate agent about a house closing scheduled for next week. The down payment? $75,000, half of the recent withdrawal plus what must have been Natasha's contribution. There were also emails to a private school regarding enrollment for Samuel Wilson Johnson, and correspondence with a moving company for a relocation to Boston. Boston, 3,000 miles away. Lawrence had been planning to disappear with his other family, leaving me behind without a word. I was so absorbed in my discovery that I didn't hear the door open behind me. A soft gasp alerted me to another presence in the room. I turned slowly, already knowing who I would see. Natasha Wilson stood in the doorway, her face pale with shock and grief. In person, she looked younger than in her staff photo, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She wore scrubs, as though she had come directly from work. Around her neck hung a delicate gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant. The missing Cartier necklace, no doubt. "Who are you?" she asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. I stood, drawing myself up to my full height. "I am Abimbola Johnson, Lawrence's wife, his legal wife," I added, emphasizing the word legal. Natasha's hand flew to her throat, clutching the golden heart. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We've been married for 6 years. 6 years. While I had been building my business, supporting his career, planning our retirement, Lawrence had been building a second life with this woman. A life that included a child. How did you meet? I found myself asking, curiosity temporarily overriding anger. Natasha hesitated, confusion evident on her face. She clearly hadn't expected this question. At the hospital. I was a new nurse in cardiology. He was kind to me when others weren't. He mentored me, helped me advance. The same story Lawrence had always told about his dedication to helping immigrants in medicine. Had it ever been true, or was it always his method for finding vulnerable women? And the boy in the photos? I asked, holding up the phone. Is he Lawrence's son? Natasha's eyes widened at the sight of the unlocked phone. Samuel, she confirmed softly. He's 5. Lawrence was overjoyed when he was born. He said he had always wanted children, but... She trailed off, realization dawning on her face, but his first wife couldn't have them. I felt as though I'd been slapped. Lawrence and I had tried for years to conceive. The fertility treatments, the disappointments, the final acceptance that we would remain childless. All of it had been a shared grief. Or so I thought. Had he blamed me all along? Where is Samuel now? I asked. With my mother. Natasha replied automatically, then looked confused again, as if wondering why she was sharing this information with me. Does Samuel know that his father has another family? I pressed. Tears filled Natasha's eyes. He thinks Lawrence travels for work when he's with you. Lawrence promised he was going to resolve everything soon. We're supposed to move to Boston next month for his new position at Massachusetts General. He said, her voice broke. He said he had finally saved enough for us to start fresh. Just the 3 of us. $387,000. My catering business profits, our retirement fund. The future I had worked so hard to secure was being stolen to finance Lawrence's new life with his second family. Before I could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway, looking alarmed at finding both of us in the room together. Ladies, only one visitor at a time, and Dr. Johnson needs his rest. I'll have to ask one of you to leave. Natasha and I stared at each other, neither willing to be the one to go. Perhaps, I suggested with forced calm, we should both step outside and continue this conversation. It seems we have much to discuss. Natasha nodded hesitantly, and we followed the relieved nurse out of the ICU. In the hallway, we found Fatima pacing anxiously. She stopped abruptly when she saw us, her eyes narrowing at Natasha. "So you're the other woman," she said accusingly. "I'm his wife," Natasha responded automatically, then faltered. "At least I thought I was." Fatima opened her mouth to retort, but I touched her arm, silencing her. "Let's find somewhere private to talk," I suggested. "All of us." We found an empty family consultation room at the end of the hall. As we settled into the uncomfortable chairs, I noticed Natasha's hands trembling as badly as my own. Despite everything, I felt a strange connection to this woman who had been deceived as thoroughly as I had been. "How much do you know about Lawrence's life?" I asked her directly. Natasha swallowed hard. He grew up in Ghana, came to America for medical school, and became a cardiologist. He was married briefly in his 20s to an American woman, but they divorced before I met him. No children from that marriage. He has a sister in Chicago and parents still in Ghana. I almost laughed at how thoroughly Lawrence had erased me from his narrative. "Lawrence has never been married to an American woman," I said quietly. "I met him in Ghana when I was 22. We married there, then moved to America together. I built my catering business while supporting his medical career. We've been married for 22 years. Natasha shook her head in denial, but doubt was creeping into her expression. "He showed me divorce papers," she insisted. "From his marriage to Elizabeth, my middle name, which Lawrence occasionally used as a term of endearment. Those papers were falsified," I said with certainty, "just like whatever marriage certificate he provided to you must have been falsified." "We were married by a justice of the peace," Natasha said, her voice small. "Lawrence said he wanted a simple ceremony because his first marriage had been too elaborate. In reality, Lawrence and I had married in a traditional Ghanaian ceremony, followed by a church service. Nothing elaborate, but certainly meaningful. Did you ever meet his family?" I asked. "His sister in Chicago or his parents in Ghana?" Natasha's face fell further. "His sister visited once, but now that I think about it, Lawrence arranged for us to meet at a restaurant, not at our home. And his parents are elderly and can't travel. He visits them in Ghana every few years." Her eyes widened, or at least he says he does. Fatima, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke up. "So while he told you he was visiting his parents in Ghana, he was actually living with Amma. And while he told Amma he was working late or at conferences, he was with you. The man has been living 2 complete lives for years." 6 years, Natasha whispered, looking shell-shocked. "And there's more," I added grimly, pulling out my phone and showing her the bank statement with the $15,000 withdrawal. "Lawrence and I have a joint account with $387,000, primarily money I've saved from my business. He recently withdrew $15,000 without telling me. I'm guessing that was part of the down payment on your new house in Boston." Natasha nodded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "He said it was his savings. He said he'd been putting away money for years to give us a fresh start." "My money," I corrected gently. "My retirement savings. Our nest egg for returning to Ghana." Natasha buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. She had been manipulated as thoroughly as I had been, albeit in different ways. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally, looking up with reddened eyes. It was the question I had been asking myself since entering the hospital. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Financial security? To salvage what remained of my dignity? "First," I said decisively, "I'm going to protect what's mine. Then I'm going to decide what to do about Lawrence." The first person I called after leaving the hospital was not the police, nor a divorce lawyer, but my bank manager. With Fatima by my side, I explained the situation as calmly as I could, emphasizing the urgency of securing my assets. "I need to remove my husband's access to our joint account immediately," I told the manager, Mr. Chen, who had known me for years. "And I need to do it before he regains consciousness." Mr. Chen's expression was grave as he reviewed the account details on his computer. "This is highly unusual, Mrs. Johnson. Typically, we would require both account holders to approve such changes." "I understand," I replied, sliding across the desk copies of Lawrence's phone messages regarding the Boston move and photos of him with his second family. "But as you can see, This is an unusual situation. Mr. Chen studied the evidence, his frown deepening. This appears to be a case of financial exploitation, which does allow us some latitude. I can freeze the account temporarily to prevent further withdrawals, but permanent changes to the account structure will require legal documentation. It wasn't ideal, but it would buy me time. Do it, I authorized. And I'll begin the legal process immediately. While Mr. Chen processed the freeze, I called my friend Kofi, who was a lawyer specializing in family law. When I explained the situation, his usual jovial tone turned serious. "Amma, this is very serious," Kofi said, his voice grave. "Bigamy is a criminal offense. Lawrence could face felony charges, not to mention lose his medical license. But more importantly right now, we need to protect your assets and your future." I nodded, though Kofi couldn't see me through the phone. The reality of my situation was still sinking in. After 22 years of marriage, I was sitting in a bank, frantically trying to prevent my husband from stealing my life savings to fund his escape with another family. "What do I need to do first?" I asked, forcing myself to focus on practical matters. "Document everything," Kofi advised. "Bank statements, text messages, photos, anything that shows Lawrence's deception and his intent to take your money. Then file for an emergency court order to protect your assets pending a formal divorce proceeding. And Amma," he added gently, "you should consider filing a police report. What Lawrence is doing is not just immoral. It's illegal." The thought of Lawrence, respected Dr. Johnson, pillar of our community, my husband of 22 years, being arrested and possibly imprisoned made my stomach churn. Despite everything, I wasn't sure I could do that to him. Not yet anyway. "One step at a time," I told Kofi. "Can you start the paperwork for the emergency court order?" "Of course. I'll need you to come to my office as soon as possible to sign documents. And Amma, I'm so sorry this is happening to you." After finishing with the bank and arranging to meet Kofi later that afternoon, Fatima and I returned to the hospital. I needed to understand more about the extent of Lawrence's deception, and there was only one other person who could help me piece together the full picture. We found Natasha still in the family consultation room, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up when we entered, her expression a mix of wariness and resignation. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said quietly. "I have more questions," I replied, taking the seat across from her. "And I think you deserve answers too." Fatima remained standing by the door, arms crossed, a silent sentinel. "Did Lawrence ever take you to Ghana?" I asked Natasha directly. She shook her head. "He always said it was too expensive for both of us to go. He went alone, supposedly to visit his parents. When was his last trip?" "About 8 months ago. He was gone for 2 weeks." I nodded slowly. 8 months ago, Lawrence had indeed traveled to Ghana, with me. We had visited the land we had purchased for our retirement home and met with architects. He had stood beside me, pointing out where he wanted his study to be, discussing the garden I had dreamed of planting, all while having a second wife and child waiting for him back home. "And the house in Boston," I continued. "When did you start looking for it?" "About 3 months ago," Natasha replied. "Right after Lawrence was offered the position at Massachusetts General. 3 months. Exactly when I had first noticed changes in Lawrence's behavior. When the mysterious charges began appearing. When he started working late more frequently." "Has he been supporting you financially all these years?" I asked, trying to keep accusation out of my voice. Natasha looked down at her hands. "Not entirely. I work full-time as a nurse practitioner. Lawrence helps with Samuel's expenses and some household bills, but he always said his hospital salary was limited because of family obligations back in Ghana." She looked up suddenly, realization dawning. "He meant you, didn't he? You were the family obligation." I smiled bitterly. More likely, he was using both of us as excuses to the other, while pocketing much of his considerable salary. "Cardiologists make between $400,000 and $500,000 annually. Our modest lifestyle certainly didn't reflect that income." Natasha's eyes widened. "He told me he made around $200,000, and most of it went to student loans and supporting his elderly parents." "Another lie," I confirmed. "His parents are comfortably retired with a pension from the university where his father taught." And his medical school was paid for through scholarships and grants, no student loans. We sat in silence for a moment, each processing the extent of Lawrence's elaborate deception. Was anything he told either of us true? Natasha finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's what we need to find out, I replied. For the next hour, Natasha and I compared notes on our lives with Lawrence, filling in gaps in each other's knowledge and uncovering new lies with almost every exchange. The picture that emerged was of a man who had meticulously constructed two separate lives, maintaining the deception through an intricate system of falsified documents, manipulated schedules, and calculated lies. Lawrence had told Natasha he was divorced from an American woman named Elizabeth and had never had children. He claimed to work 4 days a week at the hospital and spend the other 3 days at a private practice in a neighboring city. The days he allegedly spent at this non-existent private practice were, in reality, the days he spent at home with me. Lawrence maintained the fiction that his long hours and weekend shifts were due to the hospital's staffing shortages and his research responsibilities. The reality was that he was splitting his time between 2 families, 2 homes, 2 lives. Did you ever suspect anything? I asked Natasha. She hesitated before answering. There were inconsistencies, times when he couldn't be reached, vague explanations about where he'd been, but I trusted him. He was so good with Samuel, so attentive when he was with us. I convinced myself that his strange hours were just part of being married to a doctor. I understood completely. I too had explained away the signs, refused to see what was right in front of me. What about the marriage ceremony? I pressed. Didn't you need documentation, proof that he was free to marry? Natasha looked embarrassed. Lawrence handled all the paperwork. He said it was simpler that way since I wasn't born in the U.S. He brought the justice of the peace to us. A friend of his, supposedly, and all I had to do was sign where indicated. She paused, realization creeping into her expression. I never actually saw the official marriage license afterward. Lawrence said it was filed, and I believed him. My legal knowledge was limited, but even I knew that didn't sound legitimate. Natasha, I don't think you and Lawrence are legally married at all. Her face crumpled. What about Samuel? What does this mean for him? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Mr. Chen from the bank. Mrs. Johnson, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's been a development. Someone attempted to wire transfer $350,000 from your joint account to a bank in Boston just minutes ago. Our fraud prevention system flagged it due to the freeze we placed, but I thought you should know. My blood ran cold. That's not possible. My husband is unconscious in the hospital. The transfer was initiated online using your husband's credentials, Mr. Chen explained. It could have been an automated transfer set up previously, or someone else has his banking information, I finished, looking directly at Natasha, whose confusion appeared genuine. Thank you for letting me know, I told Mr. Chen. Please make sure no money leaves that account without my in-person authorization. After ending the call, I explained the situation to Natasha and Fatima. Someone just tried to transfer almost all of our savings to a Boston bank, I said, using Lawrence's online credentials. Natasha shook her head vehemently. It wasn't me. I don't have access to Lawrence's accounts. He always handled the finances. Fatima, who had been silently observing our exchange, finally spoke up. If not you and not Lawrence, then who? Who else would benefit from getting their hands on that money right now? The question hung in the air between us, opening yet another layer to the mystery of Lawrence's double life. If neither of his wives had attempted the transfer, who had? Our speculation was interrupted by a nurse entering the consultation room. Dr. Johnson is showing signs of waking up, she informed us. The doctor thinks he might regain consciousness within the next few hours. Natasha and I exchanged glances, a wordless acknowledgement passing between us. Soon Lawrence would have to face both of us, and explain himself not just to one betrayed wife, but to 2. I need to call my mother about Samuel, Natasha said, standing up. He'll be wondering where I am. I nodded in understanding. Despite everything, I felt a strange kinship with this woman who had been deceived as thoroughly as I had been, and I need to meet with my lawyer, I told her. But I'll be back before Lawrence wakes up. So will I, she promised, a new determination in her voice. He owes us both answers. As Fatima and I left the hospital, my phone rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Johnson?" a female voice asked when I answered. "This is Detective Rivera with the Financial Crimes Unit. We're investigating some irregularities involving accounts connected to your husband, Dr. Lawrence Johnson. Would it be possible to meet with you today?" I exchanged a glance with Fatima, whose eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Yes," I replied, my heart racing. "In fact, I think I have information that would interest you." The detective suggested meeting at her office in an hour, which would give me just enough time to see Kofi first. "What do you think this means?" Fatima asked as we got into her car. "Financial Crimes Unit? Is Lawrence involved in something even worse than we thought?" I shook my head, overwhelmed by the possibilities. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Kofi's office was in a modest building downtown, his practice focusing primarily on immigrant families and small business owners. He welcomed me with a warm hug, his familiar presence a comfort in the chaos my life had become. "I've already started the paperwork," he said, leading me to his cluttered desk. "But Amma, I need to know exactly what you want here. Are you seeking divorce? Criminal charges? Both?" I sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know yet, Kofi. First, I need to protect myself financially. Then I need to understand the full extent of what Lawrence has done." Kofi nodded, his expression grave. "The emergency order to freeze assets is straightforward. I can file it today, and given the evidence of attempted fraud, the judge will likely approve it quickly." He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "But Amma, you need to prepare yourself. This could get very public, very messy. Lawrence is well known in the medical community. Once this story breaks, I hadn't even considered the public fallout. Our circle of friends, the church community, my catering clients, all would soon know that Dr. Lawrence Johnson, respected cardiologist and community leader, was a bigamist and a fraud. "I can't worry about that now," I said finally. "I need to protect what's mine and get to the truth." Kofi had me sign several documents explaining each one carefully. The emergency order would prevent Lawrence from accessing our joint assets pending a court hearing. The divorce petition, which I decided to file immediately, would formally begin the process of ending our 22-year marriage. As I signed my name to the papers that would legally separate me from the man who had been my partner for half my life, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms, not Lawrence's. After leaving Kofi's office, Fatima drove me to the police station where Detective Rivera was waiting. Unlike the detectives on television shows, Rivera was a middle-aged woman with practical shoes and tired eyes. Her handshake was firm, her expression businesslike as she led us to a small interview room. "Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Johnson," she began, setting a folder on the table between us. "We've been investigating some financial irregularities involving multiple accounts connected to your husband. Specifically, a pattern of what appears to be money laundering through several shell corporations established in the past 5 years. I blinked in surprise. Money laundering? Shell corporations? This went far beyond Lawrence's double life with Natasha. "I don't understand," I admitted. "What exactly is my husband suspected of doing?" Detective Rivera opened the folder, revealing bank statements, corporate filings, and property records. Dr. Johnson appears to be involved in a complex scheme to hide income and assets. We've tracked transactions totaling over $2.5 million flowing through various entities he controls, much of it ultimately directed to overseas accounts. The amount staggered me. $2.5 million? Where had that kind of money come from? Lawrence's salary was substantial, but nowhere near that amount, even over several years. "There's more," Rivera continued, studying my reaction carefully. "We believe some of this money may be connected to illegal pharmaceutical sales. Prescription medications diverted and sold on the black market." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Lawrence, my Lawrence, involved in drug dealing? It seemed impossible. Yet after the revelations of the past 24 hours, I no longer knew what the man I had married was capable of. "I had no idea," I whispered, gripping the edge of the table for support. "I just discovered today that he has another family, another wife. But this is beyond anything I imagined." Detective Rivera's expression softened slightly. "Another wife? That would explain some of the separate residences we've identified." "Mrs. Johnson, how much do you know about your husband's financial activities?" "Almost nothing, apparently," I replied bitterly. I managed my catering business finances. He managed his medical career. We maintained separate personal accounts but shared a joint savings account for retirement. I contributed most of that money, $387,000 from my business profits. Just this morning, someone attempted to transfer $350,000 from that account to a Boston bank. Rivera made notes as I spoke. Boston is significant. We've traced several of the shell corporations to addresses there. Does your husband have connections in Boston? He's been planning to move there, I explained. Supposedly for a position at Massachusetts General Hospital. His other family was going to relocate with him. They've already purchased a house there. Fatima, who had been silently observing, spoke up. Are you saying Lawrence might have been planning to disappear? Take the money and run? Detective Rivera's expression confirmed this was exactly what she suspected. We believe Dr. Johnson realized our investigation was closing in. The transfer attempt this morning suggests he was accelerating his timeline. But who made the transfer attempt? I asked. Lawrence is unconscious in the hospital after a car accident. And his other partner seems as shocked by all this as I am. That's what we need to find out, Rivera replied. Mrs. Johnson, I'd like to interview you formally about your husband's activities, associates, and behavior over the past few years. Anything you can tell us might help piece together what he's been involved in. For the next 2 hours, I answered Detective Rivera's questions as best I could, recounting Lawrence's work schedule, his colleagues, his travel patterns, and any unusual behavior I had noticed. I shared everything I had learned about his relationship with Natasha and their plans to move to Boston. There's one thing that doesn't make sense, I said as our interview wound down. If Lawrence has been hiding millions of dollars, why take the money from our joint account? Why risk alerting me to his plans by withdrawing $15,000 last week? Rivera nodded, having clearly considered this question herself. We believe Dr. Johnson was compartmentalizing his activities very carefully. The illegal funds were likely being saved for a specific purpose, while your joint account was meant to finance his new life with his second family. Classic case of keeping the streams separate to avoid detection. So he was stealing from me to support them, while hiding his criminal proceeds elsewhere, I summarized. The full extent of Lawrence's betrayal still difficult to comprehend. Essentially, yes, Rivera confirmed. And now, with our investigation closing in and his accident complicating matters, someone is trying to consolidate those funds. The question is who? As Fatima and I left the police station, my mind was reeling with the implications of everything I had learned. Lawrence wasn't just a cheater and a bigamist. He was potentially a criminal involved in drug trafficking. The man I had loved, trusted, and built a life with for 22 years was a complete stranger. We need to get back to the hospital, I told Fatima. If Lawrence is waking up, I want to be there. I need answers. When we arrived at the ICU, Natasha was already in Lawrence's room. Through the glass partition, I could see her sitting by his bedside, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. I hesitated at the door, suddenly uncertain. Was I ready to face the man who had betrayed me so completely? Before I could decide, Natasha looked up and saw me. She nodded slightly, an invitation to join her. Taking a deep breath, I entered the room. Lawrence looked different somehow. Perhaps it was the bruising from the accident, or perhaps it was that I was now seeing him through unclouded eyes. The machines monitoring his vital signs beeped steadily, indicating no change in his condition despite the nurse's earlier optimism. He hasn't woken up yet, Natasha said quietly. The doctor says it could still be hours. I took the seat on the opposite side of the bed, studying the face of the man I had once loved beyond reason. Did you know he's under investigation? I asked, keeping my voice low. For money laundering and illegal pharmaceutical sales. Natasha's sharp intake of breath was answer enough. What? That's not possible. Financial crimes detectives have been tracking him for months, I explained. They believe he's hidden millions of dollars through shell corporations. Millions? Natasha repeated, her voice cracking. But we've always lived so modestly. Lawrence said we needed to save every penny for Samuel's education and our future. I laughed bitterly. He told me the same thing, about saving for our retirement in Ghana, all while he was apparently amassing a fortune through criminal activities. Natasha's gaze dropped to Lawrence's still form. her expression hardening. Was anything he told either of us true? Anything at all? Before I could answer, Lawrence's fingers twitched. Both of us froze, watching intently as his eyelids fluttered. "I'll get the nurse," Natasha said, quickly pressing the call button. A moment later, a nurse bustled in, checking Lawrence's vital signs and pupil response. "He's regaining consciousness," she confirmed. "I'll notify the doctor. In the meantime, try not to overwhelm him with too much stimulation." As the nurse left, Lawrence's eyes opened fully, confusion evident as he tried to focus. His gaze landed on me first, then shifted to Natasha on the opposite side of the bed. For a moment, he seemed unable to process what he was seeing. His two wives together, waiting for him to wake up. Recognition dawned slowly, followed immediately by panic. His heart rate monitor began beeping more rapidly as he attempted to sit up, wincing in pain. "Don't try to move," I advised coolly. "You've been in an accident. Several broken ribs and a punctured lung, among other injuries." Lawrence looked from me to Natasha and back again, his expression one of pure terror. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a dry croak emerged. Natasha, ever the nurse, automatically reached for the water cup with a straw, helping him take a small sip. The domestic intimacy of the gesture made my chest ache with a fresh wave of betrayal. "Amma," Lawrence finally managed, his voice raspy. What's happening?" "That's what we'd all like to know, Lawrence," I replied evenly. "Perhaps you could start by explaining why you have two wives. Or why you've been stealing my money to buy a house in Boston for your other family. Or maybe," I added, leaning closer, "you'd like to explain the $2.5 million you've allegedly been laundering through shell corporations." Lawrence's face drained of what little color it had. His eyes darted to the door as if looking for an escape. "The police are investigating you," Natasha added, her voice trembling with anger. "And whoever tried to transfer $350,000 from Alma's account this morning—" "That wasn't me," Lawrence whispered, panic evident in his eyes. "You have to believe me. I didn't authorize that transfer." "But you were planning to take the money," I pressed. "Just like you took $15,000 last week. Just like you've been taking from both of us for years." Lawrence closed his eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. When he opened them again, there was a calculating look that I had never seen before, or perhaps had never allowed myself to see. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out," he said finally, his voice stronger. "Either of you. I was going to explain everything, make arrangements for both of you to be taken care of." "Taken care of?" I repeated incredulously. "While you disappeared with millions in stolen money? While you abandoned your son?" I gestured toward Natasha, whose hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Lawrence's gaze shifted between us, clearly trying to formulate a strategy. "It's complicated," he began. "There are things you don't understand, pressures you can't imagine." "Then explain it to us, Lawrence," Natasha demanded, her voice hard. "Explain how you justified lying to both of us for years. Explain how you could look me in the eye and promise me a future, together while you were still married to Amma. Explain how you could plan to take Samuel away from everything he knows, without even telling me the truth about who you really are." Lawrence seemed to deflate under the weight of her words. For a moment, I thought he might actually confess, might finally offer the truth both of us deserved. Instead, he pressed the nurse call button. "I need pain medication," he told the nurse who responded. "And I'm not feeling well enough for visitors right now." The nurse looked uncertainly between Lawrence and us. "The doctor will want to examine you now that you're awake. I'll let him know about your pain levels." As she left, I stood up, gathering my purse. "This isn't over, Lawrence. Not by a long shot. The police will be here soon to question you. So will the hospital administration. Once they learn about your double life. Your career, your reputation, your freedom, it's all on the line now." Natasha also rose, her expression grim. "And whatever happens with the legal system, you'll have to live with what you've done to us." "To Samuel, he idolizes you, Lawrence. How am I supposed to explain to our son that his father is a criminal and a liar?" Lawrence's face crumpled at the mention of his son, the first genuine emotion I had seen from him since he regained consciousness. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell Samuel. He's innocent in all this." "So were we," I replied quietly, turning to leave. But you didn't spare us, did you? As Natasha and I walked out of the ICU together, a strange sense of solidarity had formed between us. Two women who had loved and been betrayed by the same man, now facing uncertain futures. What happens next? Natasha asked as we reached the hospital lobby. I don't know about you, I replied, but I'm going to fight for what's mine. Lawrence may have taken my trust, but he won't take my future. Natasha nodded, a similar resolve hardening her features. I need to protect Samuel. Whatever Lawrence has done, my son shouldn't suffer for it. We exchanged phone numbers, promising to keep each other informed of developments. As I watched Natasha walk away to her car, I felt an odd mixture of emotions: anger, grief, determination, and underlying it all, a strange sense of liberation. The life I had known was over, but perhaps the life awaiting me would be built on truth rather than lies. Fatima, who had been waiting patiently in the lobby, came to my side. Ready to go home? I shook my head. Not yet. There's one more place I need to go first. I directed Fatima to drive to an address in the suburbs about 30 minutes from our own home. It was a modest neighborhood of small, well-maintained houses with tidy yards. Exactly the kind of place where a nurse practitioner might live with her young son. Is this where they live? Fatima asked incredulously as we parked across the street from a blue 2-story house with a basketball hoop in the driveway. So close to your home? He was living 2 separate lives just 30 minutes apart. I nodded, studying the house where my husband had created his second family. Toys were visible in the front yard. A bicycle leaning against the porch, a soccer ball in the grass. Evidence of the child Lawrence had with another woman while telling me for years that our inability to conceive was simply God's will. What are we doing here, Amma? Fatima asked gently. What do you hope to find? I'm not sure, I admitted. But Lawrence has been hiding something beyond just his double life. The detective said he's been laundering millions of dollars. That money has to be somewhere, and it might be connected to whoever tried to transfer funds from our account this morning. As we sat watching the house, an older woman emerged from the front door, holding the hand of a small boy, Samuel. Even from a distance, the child's resemblance to Lawrence was striking. The same warm brown skin, the same confident posture, the same questioning tilt of the head as he looked up at the woman who must have been Natasha's mother. Something twisted painfully in my chest. This child was Lawrence's son, the child we had prayed for, the family we had wanted to build together. While I had grieved our childlessness, accepted it as fate, Lawrence had simply gone and created the family he wanted with someone else. That's his son, I whispered to Fatima. The boy Lawrence had with Natasha. Fatima squeezed my hand supportively. Amma, this isn't helping you. Let's go back to your house. You need to rest. I was about to agree when I noticed a sleek black car pull up to the curb in front of Natasha's house. A man in an expensive suit emerged, looking around cautiously before approaching the front door. He wasn't Lawrence. This man was shorter, with a muscular build and a shaved head. Natasha's mother appeared wary as she spoke to him from the doorway, keeping Samuel behind her. The conversation appeared tense. The man kept gesturing emphatically while Natasha's mother shook her head firmly. Finally, he handed her what looked like a business card before returning to his car and driving away. I wonder who that was, I murmured, more to myself than to Fatima. Whoever it was, Natasha's mother didn't seem happy to see him, Fatima observed. Do you think it might be connected to Lawrence's legal troubles? The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made sense. If Lawrence was involved in criminal activities, he might have associates who were now concerned about what his wives might reveal to authorities. We should go, I decided, suddenly uneasy. But I'm going to call Natasha and tell her about this visitor. As Fatima pulled away from the curb, I noticed the black car had circled the block and was now parked at the corner, the driver watching Natasha's house intently. A chill ran down my spine. Drive directly to the police station, I instructed Fatima. I think Samuel might be in danger. Detective Rivera listened carefully as I described the suspicious visitor to Natasha's home. This could be connected to our ongoing investigation, she acknowledged. Dr. Johnson had several known associates who might be concerned about what he could reveal to authorities. Could they be targeting his son? Or Natasha? I asked, anxiety gripping me despite my conflicted feelings about Lawrence's second family. It's possible, Rivera admitted. We'll send officers to keep an eye on the residence and make contact with Ms. Wilson to ensure her and her son's safety. I provided Natasha's phone number, then hesitated before asking, "What about my home? Could I be at risk as well?" Rivera's expression grew more serious. As Dr. Johnson's legal wife and the primary account holder of assets he appears to have been targeting, yes, you could potentially be at risk. I'd recommend staying somewhere other than your home for the next few days, at least until we've had a chance to question Dr. Johnson and assess the full situation. The reality of my new circumstances hit me with full force. Not only had my marriage imploded, but I was now potentially in danger from Lawrence's criminal associates. My life had transformed from that of a successful caterer and respected community member to that of a potential target in a criminal investigation. "You can stay with me," Fatima offered immediately. "My guest room is all yours for as long as you need it." I nodded gratefully, though the thought of not returning to my own home, the home I had built and maintained for decades, filled me with indignation. Lawrence had taken so much from me already. Now he was forcing me from my own space. "Mrs. Johnson," Detective Rivera said, reclaiming my attention. "There's something else you should know. We've been investigating Dr. Johnson for months, but we've never been able to locate the bulk of the money he's allegedly laundered. Our financial forensics team believes he must have physical records somewhere. Account numbers, access codes, maybe even actual cash. If you know of any place he might hide such information," I thought carefully. Lawrence had always maintained a home office that he kept meticulously organized and private. Even when cleaning the house, I respected his space and rarely entered without a specific purpose. "His home office," I suggested. "He has a locked file cabinet that I've never had access to. And there's a safe behind his medical degrees on the wall." Rivera nodded. "We'll obtain a search warrant immediately. In the meantime, please go with your friend, pack some essentials, and then leave your home as quickly as possible. If any of Dr. Johnson's associates believe you might have access to his records or accounts, they could be watching your residence as well." The drive back to my house was tense, both Fatima and I scanning for any signs of surveillance. The home I had loved for 20 years suddenly seemed foreign and threatening as we pulled into the driveway. The carefully tended flower beds, the wind chimes on the porch that Lawrence had brought back from a medical conference in Arizona, the welcome mat I had chosen with such care. All of it now part of a life that had been built on lies. "Let's be quick," Fatima advised as we entered. "Just grab what you need for a few days." I moved through the house efficiently, packing clothing, toiletries, and important documents into a small suitcase. In the bedroom I had shared with Lawrence, I paused, looking at our wedding photo on the dresser. We had looked so happy, so full of hope for our future together. Had he been planning this elaborate deception even then, or had it evolved over time? On impulse, I opened Lawrence's dresser drawer, sifting through his meticulously folded socks and underwear. Nothing unusual there. The second drawer held his casual shirts, again revealing nothing of interest. But in the third drawer, beneath his sweaters, my fingers touched something hard and rectangular. It was a small leather-bound notebook, the kind Lawrence often used for jotting down patient notes or research ideas. But when I opened it, I found not medical observations, but a series of numbers and codes, arranged in a pattern that made no sense to me. Pages and pages of them, along with occasional abbreviations and initials. "Fatima," I called softly. "I think I found something." She came into the bedroom, examining the notebook over my shoulder. "This looks like financial records," she said. "Account numbers, transaction codes. This could be what the police are looking for." I was about to respond when a noise from downstairs froze us both, the distinct sound of the front door opening, followed by footsteps in the hallway. "Is someone there?" I called out, my heart racing. No answer, but the footsteps continued, moving deliberately through the living room toward the stairs. Fatima grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the ensuite bathroom. "Call 911, she whispered urgently, closing and locking the bathroom door behind us. With trembling fingers I dialed, whispering our address and the situation to the dispatcher. "Police are on their way," I told Fatima, keeping my voice as low as possible. 3 to 5 minutes. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, pausing as if the intruder was listening for signs of our presence. Then they moved deliberately toward the bedroom. A rattling sound indicated someone searching through Lawrence's desk. "They're looking for something," I breathed into Fatima's ear. "Maybe the same notebook I just found." The bedroom door creaked open, and the footsteps approached the bathroom. The handle turned once, twice, stopped by the lock. "Mrs. Johnson?" A male voice called through the door. "I know you're in there." "I just want to talk." I remained silent, clutching the notebook to my chest. "Your husband owes us a lot of money," the voice continued. "Money that was supposed to be transferred today. We can resolve this peacefully if you cooperate." In the distance, faint sirens could be heard approaching. The intruder must have heard them too, because there was a muttered curse, followed by retreating footsteps. "He's leaving," Fatima whispered. "We should stay put until the police arrive," I replied, still shaking with fear. When the police finally arrived minutes later, the intruder was long gone. A thorough search of the house revealed no one hiding, but there were clear signs of someone having gone through Lawrence's office. Drawers left open, papers scattered across the desk. He was looking for something specific, I told the officers, showing them the notebook I had found. "Could it be this?" The senior officer examined the notebook briefly before bagging it as evidence. "This could be important," he acknowledged. "Detective Rivera will want to see this immediately. In the meantime, ma'am, you should definitely stay somewhere else until we can guarantee your safety." I nodded, grabbing my suitcase and the few personal items I'd managed to pack. As we left the house, my home for 2 decades, I felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. The life I had built was crumbling around me, but I would not allow myself to crumble with it. At Fatima's apartment, I finally allowed myself to break down. The tears came in violent waves, sobs racking my body as Fatima held me, murmuring comforting words. I cried for the life I had lost, for the betrayal I had suffered, for the future I had planned that would never come to pass. 22 years, I wept. 22 years of my life given to a man who was living a lie, who had another family, another child, who was involved in God knows what kind of criminal activities. "You couldn't have known," Fatima assured me. "Lawrence fooled everyone, the hospital administration, his colleagues, the community. He was meticulous in his deception. But I should have seen the signs," I insisted. "The unexplained absences, the financial discrepancies, the emotional distance. I chose not to see them because I loved him, because I trusted him. How could I have been so blind?" "Love makes fools of us all," Fatima said gently. "But you're seeing clearly now, and you're taking action. That's what matters." My phone rang, Detective Rivera calling with an update. "Mrs. Johnson, we've examined the notebook you found. It appears to contain account information for multiple offshore banks, as well as what might be cryptocurrency wallet addresses. This could be exactly what we've been looking for. Did your husband ever mention anything about digital currencies to you?" "No," I replied, trying to recall any unusual conversations. Lawrence was always conservative with investments. He preferred real estate and traditional savings. At least that's what he told me. "Well, it seems he had other ideas," Rivera said. "We're working to decode the entries in the notebook, but it may take time. In the meantime, we've stationed officers near Ms. Wilson's home as well as your residence. The man who broke in was captured on your neighbor's security camera. We're working to identify him now." After ending the call, I sat heavily on Fatima's sofa, trying to process all that had happened in the past 24 hours. My husband was a bigamist, possibly a criminal, and now dangerous people were looking for money he had apparently stolen or hidden. What am I going to do? I asked Fatima, the weight of uncertainty crushing me. How do I even begin to rebuild from this? Fatima's expression turned from sympathy to determination. "One step at a time, Amma. First you secure your finances. Then you protect your legal rights. After that, you focus on your business and your future. Lawrence has taken enough from you. Don't let him take your strength too." Her words sparked something in me, a flicker of the resilience that had carried me from Ghana to America, that had helped me build a successful business from nothing, that had sustained me through years of disappointment and hardship. "You're right," I said, straightening my shoulders. I didn't come all this way, work this hard, to let Lawrence destroy everything I've built. That night, sleep eluded me as I tossed and turned in Fatima's guest bed. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Lawrence's face, not as I had known it for 22 years, but as I had seen it in the hospital, calculating and unfamiliar. Who was this man I had married? Had any part of our life together been real? My phone buzzed with a text message at just past midnight. It was from Natasha. The police are watching my house. They told me about the man who broke into your place. Are you safe? I hesitated before responding. Despite our shared victimhood, Natasha represented everything I had lost. The family Lawrence had chosen over me. The future he had been planning without me. I'm staying with a friend, I texted back finally. How is Samuel? Confused and scared. He keeps asking about his father. I don't know what to tell him. My heart ached for the child caught in this mess. An innocent victim of Lawrence's deception. Tell him his father is sick and needs time to get better, I suggested. Children are resilient, but they deserve some measure of the truth. Thank you, Natasha replied. For what it's worth, I had no idea about you. About any of this. I feel like such a fool. We both were, I responded, but not anymore. The next morning, I received calls from both the hospital administrator and my lawyer. Kofi, the hospital was launching an internal investigation into Lawrence's activities, including his professional conduct and potential misuse of hospital resources. Kofi informed me that the emergency order freezing our joint assets had been approved, and a hearing for the divorce proceedings was scheduled for the following month. The judge has been informed of the ongoing criminal investigation, Kofi explained. Given the circumstances, you're in a strong position to receive a favorable settlement. Lawrence's bigamy and financial crimes will weigh heavily against him. I don't want his money, I said firmly. I just want what's mine, what I earned. And you'll get it, Kofi assured me, plus potentially damages for the emotional harm and financial deception you've suffered. Later that afternoon, Detective Rivera requested that I come to the station to review some findings from Lawrence's notebook. Fatima insisted on accompanying me, her presence a steady comfort in the chaos my life had become. At the station, Rivera led us to a conference room where financial documents, photographs, and copies of pages from the notebook covered a large table. Mrs. Johnson, we've made significant progress in decoding your husband's records, Rivera began. It appears he's been involved in a sophisticated scheme to divert prescription medications from the hospital and sell them through various middlemen. The profits were then laundered through shell companies before being converted to cryptocurrency and moved offshore. I stared at the evidence of Lawrence's crimes spread out before me. Photographs showed him meeting with individuals who Rivera identified as known pharmaceutical black market dealers. Financial records detailed the flow of money from these transactions into various accounts and investments. The total amount we've traced so far exceeds $3.2 million, Rivera continued. Much of it converted to Bitcoin and other digital currencies, which explains why our traditional financial investigations had difficulty following the money trail. Where is the money now? I asked, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of Lawrence's deception. That's what we're trying to determine, Rivera replied. Your husband appears to have used a complex system of digital wallets and exchanges to obscure the final destination of the funds. However, the notebook you found contains what we believe are the access codes to these accounts. My mind raced with implications. If Lawrence had stolen millions, would his associates come after me, thinking I had access to the money? Would they target Natasha and Samuel as well? What happens now? I asked. Now that Dr. Johnson is conscious, we'll be arresting and charging him, Rivera explained. The evidence is substantial, and with your testimony and the notebook, we have a strong case. However, she added, her expression turning grave, his associates remain at large and may still believe you have access to the accounts or information that could lead to the money. So I'm still in danger, I concluded. Potentially, yes, which is why we're offering you temporary placement in our witness protection program until the main players in this network are apprehended. The words hit me like a physical blow. Witness protection, leaving behind my name, my business, my friends, my community. It seemed too much to bear on top of everything else Lawrence had taken from me. What about my catering business? I asked, grasping at the one aspect of my life that still felt like mine. What about my home? My friends? It would be temporary, Rivera assured me. Just until we've neutralized the immediate threat. A few weeks, perhaps a couple of months at most. Fatima squeezed my hand supportively. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you, Amma. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. Stay and potentially face danger from Lawrence's criminal associates, or leave behind everything I had built to start yet another new life, even temporarily. What about Natasha and Samuel? I asked suddenly. Are they being offered the same protection? Rivera nodded. Yes, we've already approached Ms. Wilson with the same offer. Given her son's involvement, we believe she'll accept. The thought of Natasha and Samuel, the family Lawrence had chosen over me, sharing in this upheaval brought a strange mix of emotions. Resentment, certainly, but also an unexpected sense of solidarity. We were all victims of Lawrence's elaborate deception. I need time to think about it, I told Rivera. This is overwhelming. Of course, she replied, but I would urge you not to delay too long. The threat is real, and your safety is our priority. As Fatima and I left the police station, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Wary after everything that had happened, I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to accept the call. Mrs. Johnson? A male voice asked. Who is this? I replied cautiously. My name is Dr. Reynolds. I'm the chief of cardiology at Mercy General. I was hoping we could meet to discuss recent developments regarding your husband. My first instinct was to refuse. I had heard enough about Lawrence's deceptions for one day. But curiosity won out. When and where? My office at the hospital, perhaps tomorrow morning? There are some matters that might be better discussed in person. I agreed to meet him, then turned to Fatima with a questioning look. The chief of cardiology wants to meet with me. What do you think that's about? Fatima shrugged. Maybe they're worried about liability. If Lawrence was stealing drugs from the hospital, they could be facing serious legal issues. That made sense, yet something about the request felt off. Why would the chief of cardiology want to meet with me specifically, rather than having the hospital's legal team handle it? The next morning, dressed in one of the few professional outfits I had managed to pack, I arrived at Dr. Reynolds' office. He was an older man with silver hair and a grave expression that suggested he carried the weight of significant responsibility. Mrs. Johnson, thank you for coming, he greeted me, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. What I'm about to share with you is highly sensitive and, frankly, deeply troubling for our institution. I braced myself for more revelations about Lawrence's criminal activities, but what came next shocked me in an entirely different way. Your husband's medical research, Dr. Reynolds began. The groundbreaking work on cardiac regeneration therapy that earned him his position and reputation here. We have reason to believe it may have been falsified. I blinked in surprise. Amidst all the revelations of bigamy and financial crimes, this was unexpected. Falsified how? Manipulated data. Fabricated results. We've had concerns for some time, but Lawrence was adept at deflecting questions and providing plausible explanations for inconsistencies. But in light of the criminal investigation, we conducted a thorough review of his research and found disturbing patterns of data manipulation. This struck at the core of who I thought Lawrence was, a dedicated physician, committed to saving lives through his work. Even as I had discovered his personal betrayals, I had clung to the belief that his professional life, at least, was genuine. What does this mean? I asked. It means potentially retracting multiple published studies. It means patients who were enrolled in clinical trials based on his research may have been exposed to unnecessary risks. It means the hospital's reputation and funding could be severely impacted. Dr. Reynolds ran a hand through his silver hair. And it means Lawrence's entire medical career was essentially built on fraud. The realization hit me with unexpected force. Lawrence hadn't just betrayed me personally. He had betrayed his oath as a physician, his colleagues, his patients, everyone who had trusted in his expertise and integrity. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Dr. Reynolds hesitated before answering. 2 reasons. First, as Lawrence's legal wife, you may face questions or even legal implications as investigations proceed. I wanted you to be prepared. And the second reason, we've discovered evidence that Lawrence may have used research funds to finance his other activities. There are unexplained withdrawals from research grants, equipment purchases that never arrived, consultancy fees paid to non-existent experts. In total, approximately $750,000 that we cannot account for. Another layer of deception, another facet of Lawrence's elaborate fraud. I felt numb, unable to process yet more evidence of the stranger I had married. "I'm sorry to add to your burden," Dr. Reynolds said, genuine compassion in his voice. "But I felt you deserved to know the full extent of the situation you're facing." I thanked him mechanically, my mind racing to integrate this new information with everything else I had learned. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rivera. "Dr. Johnson is being formally charged today. Would you like to be present for the arraignment?" Did I want to see Lawrence brought into court in handcuffs, facing the consequences of his actions? Part of me craved that moment of justice, of seeing him finally held accountable. Another part feared facing him, feared what I might feel when I looked into the eyes of the man who had destroyed my life. "Yes," I texted back. "I'll be there." The courthouse was crowded when I arrived. Reporters gathered outside, having caught wind of the sensational case, a respected cardiologist charged with drug trafficking, money laundering, and fraud. I slipped in through a side entrance, directed by an officer Rivera had arranged to escort me. Inside the courtroom, I took a seat in the back row, hoping to remain inconspicuous. To my surprise, Natasha entered shortly after, her expression determined as she scanned the room. Our eyes met, and after a moment's hesitation, she came to sit beside me. "I needed to see it," she said simply. "For Samuel's sake, I needed to see his father face the truth." I nodded in understanding. We sat in silence, two women united by betrayal, waiting to witness the downfall of the man who had deceived us both. When Lawrence was brought in, I barely recognized him. Gone was the confident, distinguished physician I had known for 22 years. In his place was a diminished figure in an orange jumpsuit, his movements restricted by handcuffs, his eyes downcast. The charges were read aloud. Multiple counts of drug trafficking, money laundering, wire fraud, identity theft, and more. Each charge carried potential years in prison, the combined weight suggesting Lawrence might spend the rest of his life behind bars. When asked how he pleaded, Lawrence's voice was barely audible. "Not guilty." Beside me, Natasha stiffened. "Even now," she whispered, "he can't admit what he's done." The judge denied bail, citing flight risk given the substantial hidden assets and the serious nature of the charges. As Lawrence was led away, he finally looked up, his gaze sweeping the courtroom until it found us, his two wives, sitting side by side, witnessing his disgrace. For a moment, our eyes locked. I searched for some sign of remorse, some acknowledgement of the pain he had caused, but found nothing recognizable in his expression. This man was truly a stranger to me. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as they called out questions. Natasha and I hurried toward the parking lot, heads down, refusing to engage. "Mrs. Johnson." "Ms. Wilson, how does it feel to discover your husband's double life? Did either of you suspect Dr. Johnson's criminal activities? Ms. Wilson, will your son be allowed to visit his father in prison?" The last question struck a particular nerve. I glanced at Natasha, whose face had gone pale. Whatever resentment I might have felt toward her and her son had dissolved in the face of our shared victimhood. "They'll never stop," I said quietly. "This story is too sensational. We'll be hounded for months." Natasha nodded grimly. "I've been thinking about Detective Rivera's offer. The witness protection program. For Samuel's sake, I think I need to accept." The decision crystallized for me in that moment. I think I do too. A fresh start, away from all of this, at least until things settle down. We reached Natasha's car first, and she turned to me with an unexpected suggestion. "Would you like to come meet Samuel? Before we both potentially disappear into new lives, I think he should know the truth. A child-appropriate version, at least." The invitation surprised me. Meet the child Lawrence had with another woman while married to me, the son he had never told me existed. It seemed both painful and necessary. Yes, I decided, I would like that. Samuel was a beautiful child with Lawrence's eyes and smile, but Natasha's gentleness. He greeted me shyly, clearly confused by the presence of a stranger in his home. "Samuel," Natasha began carefully. "This is Mrs. Johnson. She's a very important person in your father's life." "Is she a doctor too?" Samuel asked innocently. "No, sweetie. She's someone who has known your dad for a very long time, and she's going through some of the same difficult changes that we are right now." Samuel studied me with the directness only children possess. "Is my dad in trouble because of his medicine work?" Natasha looked at me helplessly, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. "Your dad made some mistakes," I said gently, surprising myself with the protective instinct that rose within me. "Grown-up mistakes that have consequences, but none of those mistakes are your fault. And none of them change the fact that he loves you." The last part was an assumption, perhaps even a lie, but it felt like the right thing to say to this innocent child caught in the wreckage of his father's choices. Samuel nodded solemnly. "Is he going to jail for a long time?" "We don't know yet," Natasha answered honestly. "But some things are going to change for us. We might need to move away for a while, have an adventure in a new place." Samuel's eyes widened. "Like witness protection? Like in the movies?" Natasha shot me an alarmed look, clearly wondering where he had heard the term. "Something like that," I acknowledged. "A fresh start somewhere new, where people don't know about the mistakes your dad made. Will you be coming too?" Samuel asked me directly, with that unnerving perceptiveness children sometimes display. I hesitated, looking to Natasha for guidance. "Mrs. Johnson will be going somewhere different," Natasha explained, "but knowing she's out there, starting fresh just like us, might make it a little less scary, right?" Samuel considered this, then nodded. Like we're all astronauts going to different planets, but still in the same mission. Despite everything, I found myself smiling at his analogy. Exactly like that. As I prepared to leave, Samuel unexpectedly hugged me. "Good luck on your planet, Mrs. Johnson," he whispered. I hugged him back, tears stinging my eyes. This child, who should have been a stranger to me, felt connected in the most painful and beautiful way. In another life, under different circumstances, he might have been my son too. "You too, Samuel," I replied softly. "Be brave." Outside, Natasha walked me to my car. "Thank you," she said simply, "for not hating him. For not hating us?" "Samuel is innocent in all this," I replied. "And so were you. We were both deceived by the same man. What will you do now?" Really, I considered the question. The witness protection offer was tempting. A complete escape from the media attention, the criminal proceedings, the community gossip. But it also meant abandoning everything I had built, everything I had worked for. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. Part of me wants to run as far as possible from all of this. But another part doesn't want to let Lawrence take anything more from me than he already has. Natasha nodded in understanding. "Whatever you decide, I hope you find peace, Amma. We both deserve that, at least." As I drove away from Natasha's home, from Lawrence's second family, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. The life I had known was gone, shattered beyond repair by Lawrence's betrayal. But perhaps in those broken pieces, I could find the materials to build something new. Something entirely my own. Back at Fatima's apartment, I found Detective Rivera waiting for me. "Mrs. Johnson, we've made a significant breakthrough in decoding your husband's financial records," she announced. "We've located approximately $2.8 million in cryptocurrency holdings. As these were proceeds from illegal activity, they will be seized by the government. However," she added, "given your cooperation and status as a victim in this case, the prosecutor is willing to discuss the possibility of restitution from these assets." "Restitution?" I repeated, not quite comprehending. "Financial compensation for the harm you've suffered," Rivera explained, "including the funds Lawrence took from your joint account, plus potentially additional damages." It was a dizzying prospect. Not just recovering my own money, but potentially receiving compensation for the years of deception and betrayal. Yet it felt hollow somehow, as if no amount of money could truly make amends for what Lawrence had done. "What about Natasha and Samuel?" I asked. "Will they receive compensation too?" Rivera looked surprised by my question. "That would be up to the prosecutor and the court. Ms. Wilson's situation is complicated, given the nature of her relationship with Dr. Johnson." Their relationship was based on the same lies as mine, I said firmly, and Samuel is an innocent child who deserves security. Rivera studied me thoughtfully. I'll convey your concerns to the prosecutor. It's unusual for a primary spouse to advocate for the other family, but your perspective could influence how the assets are distributed. After Rivera left, I sat with Fatima, sipping the tea she had prepared and contemplating my future. You're considering turning down witness protection, aren't you? Fatima asked, knowing me well enough to read my thoughts. I nodded slowly. I've spent my entire life building my business, my reputation, my place in this community. Lawrence has taken so much from me already. I don't want to give up everything else too. It could be dangerous, Fatima warned. Lawrence's associates are still out there. I know, but I've faced danger before. When I first came to this country, I had nothing. No money, no friends, barely any English. I survived then, and I'll survive now. Fatima smiled, a mixture of pride and concern in her expression. If anyone can rebuild from this, it's you, Amma. But promise me you'll be careful. I promise, I assured her. Besides, with Lawrence in custody and the police watching his associates, the immediate danger is reduced. I need to focus on protecting my business and rebuilding my life. That night, I made a list of everything I needed to do: secure my catering business assets, find a new place to live, file for divorce, cooperate with the ongoing criminal investigation, and eventually tell my family back in Ghana about Lawrence's betrayal. The list was daunting, but each item represented a step toward reclaiming my independence. The next morning, I called Detective Rivera to decline witness protection. I appreciate the offer, I told her, but I've decided to stay and face whatever comes. This is my home, my community. I won't be driven away by Lawrence's actions. I understand, Rivera replied, her tone respectful. We'll maintain surveillance on your residence and business for the time being, and you'll have a direct line to contact me if you notice anything suspicious. My next call was to Kofi, outlining my decision and asking him to proceed with the divorce as quickly as possible. I want a complete separation from Lawrence, I emphasized. Financial, legal, personal, everything. It will take time, Kofi cautioned, especially with the criminal proceedings complicating matters, but I'll push for an expedited process given the circumstances. With the legal aspects in motion, I turned my attention to my catering business. I had events scheduled for the coming weeks, clients who depended on me, employees who needed their jobs. Whatever personal turmoil I was experiencing, I couldn't allow it to destroy what I had built. I arranged to meet my staff at our commercial kitchen, uncertain how much they knew about the situation. News travels fast in small communities, and Lawrence's arrest had made headlines in local papers. As I entered the kitchen, the sudden hush told me they had indeed heard something. I'm sure you've all seen the news, I began, addressing the room of chefs, servers, and assistants who had been part of Mama Amma's kitchen for years. My husband has been arrested on various charges. Our personal situation is complicated. But I want to assure all of you that the business is secure, your jobs are secure, and we will continue operations as normal. My head chef, Luisa, stepped forward. Amma, we're all here for you. Whatever you need, just say the word. Tears threatened to well up at this show of support, but I forced them back. Thank you. What I need right now is for us to focus on the Michaels' wedding this weekend. 300 guests, the most elaborate menu we've done this year. The team nodded, immediately turning to their preparations, giving me the normalcy I desperately needed. For the next few hours, I lost myself in the familiar rhythms of the kitchen, checking inventory, finalizing menu details, coordinating with vendors. It was therapeutic in a way nothing else could be. That afternoon, I visited several apartments, looking for a new place to call home. I couldn't return to the house I had shared with Lawrence. Too many memories, too much pain embedded in those walls. I settled on a modern one-bedroom in a secure building downtown, close to my commercial kitchen and filled with sunlight. It was smaller than what I was used to, but it felt right for this new chapter of my life. As I signed the lease, I felt a weight lifting. This place was mine alone. No hidden secrets, no divided loyalties, no shadows lurking in the corners. It represented a fresh start, on my terms. The days that followed fell into a new pattern. Mornings spent with Kofi or Detective Rivera, reviewing documents and providing information for both the divorce and criminal proceedings. Afternoons at the kitchen, immersing myself in my business. Evenings in my new apartment, gradually making it feel like home with small touches, Ghanaian textiles, family photographs, the few treasured items I had retrieved from my former house. A week after Lawrence's arraignment, I received a call from Natasha. "We're leaving tomorrow," she told me, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "The marshals have arranged everything. New identities, new location, everything. Have you told Samuel?" I asked. "Yes. He's excited about the adventure, but sad to leave his friends. Kids are resilient, though." She paused. "I wanted to thank you, Amma, for your kindness to him, for not letting your justified anger toward Lawrence and me affect how you treated my son." "Samuel deserves only good things," I replied sincerely. "None of this is his fault." "I also wanted you to know," Natasha continued, "that I declined any claim to Lawrence's seized assets. The prosecutor contacted me about possible restitution, but that money isn't mine. It never was. It belongs to you and the people Lawrence stole from." Her decision surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. From our brief interactions, Natasha had shown herself to be a woman of principle, despite the impossible situation Lawrence had placed her in. "That's very generous," I said. "But what about Samuel's future? His education?" "I'm a nurse practitioner," Natasha replied with quiet dignity. "I can provide for my son myself. I always have, even when I thought Lawrence was contributing. We'll be fine." After we said our goodbyes, knowing we would likely never speak again, I sat in contemplation. Natasha and Samuel would start fresh with new identities, leaving behind the stigma of Lawrence's crimes. Part of me envied their clean break, while another part admired my own decision to stay and rebuild from the rubble. The next significant development came 2 weeks later, when Detective Rivera called with unexpected news. "Lawrence wants to make a deal," she informed me. "Full cooperation, including information on all his associates and the location of additional hidden assets, in exchange for a reduced sentence." "How reduced?" I asked, unsure how I felt about the prospect of Lawrence avoiding the full consequences of his actions. Still substantial, likely 15 to 20 years given the severity and extent of the charges. But without a deal, he's facing potentially life in prison. I considered this. Lawrence was 58 years old. Even with a reduced sentence, he would be elderly by the time he was released. His medical career was destroyed, his reputation in tatters, his freedom forfeit for decades. It seemed like justice, even if imperfect. "There's more," Rivera added. "As part of the deal, he's offering a full confession regarding his marriage to you and his relationship with Natasha Wilson. He's willing to admit to bigamy and fraud, which would streamline your divorce proceedings considerably." This, at least, was welcome news, a clear legal path to freedom from Lawrence, without drawn-out court battles or contested claims. "Has he asked to see me?" I found myself wondering aloud. Rivera hesitated before answering. "Yes, he's requested a meeting with you before finalizing the deal. But you are under absolutely no obligation to agree." The thought of facing Lawrence, of sitting across from the man who had betrayed me so completely, sent a chill through me. What could he possibly have to say that would matter now? What explanation could justify what he had done? Yet something in me needed closure. Needed to look Lawrence in the eye one last time and understand, if possible, how the man I had loved could have lived such a profound lie. "I'll meet with him," I decided. But on my terms, and with my lawyer present. The meeting was arranged for the following day at the detention center where Lawrence was being held pending trial. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing an outfit that made me feel strong and confident. A tailored burgundy suit I had worn to cater the mayor's inauguration. A successful day in my professional life that had nothing to do with Lawrence. Kofi accompanied me, his steady presence reassuring as we were led through security checkpoints and into a private meeting room. When Lawrence was brought in, wearing an orange jumpsuit and restraints, I barely recognized him. Just weeks in custody had transformed him, his skin sallow, his posture defeated, The confident air that had once defined him completely evaporated. "Amma," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for coming." I said nothing, waiting for whatever he had traveled this path to say. "I know no apology could ever be sufficient," he began, "but I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused you. You deserved better than the life I gave you, the lies I told you. Why?" The question that had haunted me for weeks finally escaped my lips. "Why the double life? Why the criminal activity? You were a successful doctor, respected in the community. We had a good life together. What drove you to risk everything like this?" Lawrence's eyes dropped to the table between us. "It started small. A colleague at the hospital approached me about selling sample medications that would otherwise be discarded. Easy money, he said, and no one would be hurt. But then it escalated. Larger quantities, more dangerous drugs, more money at stake. Before I knew it, I was in too deep to walk away. And Natasha." "Samuel," I pressed. "Was that small too?" "I met Natasha during a low point in our marriage," Lawrence said, though the excuse sounded hollow even to him. "We had been trying for a child for years without success. When Natasha became pregnant, I couldn't walk away. I convinced myself I could manage both lives, that I wasn't really hurting anyone as long as neither of you knew about the other." His justifications rang false, self-serving. "You stole from me," I reminded him. "You were planning to take my life savings and disappear with your other family." "The money," Lawrence admitted, shame evident in his voice. Things had spiraled out of control. My suppliers were demanding payment, threatening me, threatening both families. I convinced myself that taking the money was necessary to protect everyone. "Protect us?" I laughed bitterly. "By stealing our future? By living a complete lie?" Lawrence had no answer for this, his rationalizations falling apart under the weight of reality. "I'm not here for your apologies or your explanations," I said finally. "I'm here to tell you that I'm moving forward with my life. I will divorce you. I will rebuild what you tried to destroy, and I will be happier without the burden of your deception. If your confession helps that process move faster, then that's the only value it has to me." My words clearly stung, but Lawrence nodded in acceptance. "I understand. You have every right to hate me." "I don't hate you, Lawrence," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. "Hatred requires energy and emotion I'm no longer willing to invest in you. What I feel is pity. You had everything, a successful career, a loving wife, respect in the community, and you threw it away for what? Money? The thrill of deception? A second chance at fatherhood? Was any of it worth what you've lost?" For the first time, real emotion broke through Lawrence's composed facade. Tears welled in his eyes as the full weight of his choices seemed to crash down upon him. "No," he whispered. "None of it was worth this." As Kofi and I prepared to leave, Lawrence called after me one last time. "Amma, there's one more thing you should know. The research, my cardiac regeneration work, it wasn't all falsified. The core findings were genuine. I manipulated the data to make the results,